Okay, today I'm going to make a video on how I cut, fit, and glue together a scarf joint. This is a keel out of a 1930 Dodge. The boat was 21.5 feet long, and this keel itself, it's in real bad shape. The boat was probably shored up wrong for years, and it's not worth saving. And there's a repair on the back here where they put a butt block on the bottom. So I don't have any stock long enough, so I have a piece of mahogany here that's it's 1.5 inches thick and it's 16.5 feet long. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces out of that and scarf them together, probably at the forward end here. And a scarf joint is generally for boats, it's a 1:12 ratio. So for every inch of thickness, that joint needs to be 12 inches long. So since our keel is 1.5 inches, this joint's going to be 18 inches long. So the 16.5, which is the length of my plank here, that only comes up to about here. And then you have to go back 18 inches from that. So that second piece that I cut and glue on here will be about 5 feet long. And I'm going to overlap it by 18 inches from here to here. So let me, I guess I'll talk about a scarf joint real quick. It's on this one, like I said, it's going to be for every inch of thickness, it's 12 inches long. Since this is 1.5, the joint here is going to be 18 inches, and that's all it is a taper, and it goes from 1.5 inches to 0 on both pieces, and then you glue them together. Now some people, and when I first got into working on boats, I thought to myself, well, wouldn't it be a lot easier to just come in and take out this material here and do the same thing on this plank and just overlap it? But there's a reason that, you know, the scarf joint is strong. This right here, doing it this, I did do some plywood like this one time, and these butt joints just snapped. So you know, if you think about it, this joint is only as strong as half this thickness. So if this is 1.5 inches, this joint is only as strong as 3/4 of an inch. Because these joints right here and here, they're no good. It's gonna split there. That's like taking 2 paint sticks and just gluing them together at the end. That's all that is. And there's no strength to that joint. It's just the glue, and it's gonna snap. So if you go from one extreme to the other, that joint's not going to work. It's just going to snap. But if you take and overlap the 2 paint sticks like this, that's going to be a real strong joint. So, and if you think about it, you know, on each one of these pieces, this tapers, you know, the taper is really thin, for instance, on this piece here, but look at all the wood that it's glued to up there. That's where you get all your strength from, that long taper. So there's a reason that they do it this way and not just the easy way and cut out like this, whether it be plywood or solid stock. So this joint, the 1:12 ratio, is going to be just as strong as that wood. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do on this here. And a lot of times I'll have to make that scarf joint on keels like this and on chines. I put a scarf in here. Now this is a keyed scarf, and that goes from right here up to here, and that's also through bolted too. So a lot of times on these longer pieces like the keel and the chines, I'll have to make a scarf joint. So the next step on this is to cut. This keel back here is about 4.5 to 5 inches wide, and it tapers all the way up to 2.5 inches, or 2 inches up at the front here. But I don't think it's a straight taper. I think it stays about 4.5 to 4 3/4 inches up, maybe to halfway, and then it starts tapering. So I'm going to look at that a little closer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my stock out of this piece so it's just a little bit bigger than I need. I'm going to run it through the planer, and I'll cut the second piece out too, get those the same thickness, clean that up, and I'll start the camera back up when I get those two pieces milled, okay? Okay, I took that mahogany plank and I rough cut the two pieces that are going to make up the keel. They're wider than they need to be, and there's two pieces here. One is 16.5 and the other one is 5.5, and together that old keel needs to be 19 foot 8 inches. So there's more than enough here, even with that 18-inch scarf joint. So I ran through the planer and I lost a little thickness. There's not much I could do about that. These will do, and there's still a little bit of the rough sawn right there, but I'm gonna cut. That's gonna be part of the scarf joint, so that'll get cut off. So now that I have the two pieces that make up the keel, the first thing I do is figure out which piece goes where, figure out which is up, which is forward, how these are going to be glued together, and I'll start with this long one. And a lot of times the wood will tell you like which way it wants to go in the boat. If I turn this on the side, it's got a nice straight section first and then a gradual arc, so that looks just like the keel should really. So instead of making this on the outboard side and fighting that curve, not that it would really make a difference, but the piece is already shaped like this, so I'm going to go with it with that being forward. This is going to be the aft piece. I'm going to put the scarf joint on the forward end of this, and then this piece here is kind of the same thing. If you turn it on its side, you'll see kind of a gradual arc. So this is going to be the inboard side, this is going to be the outboard side, or up I'll call it. And since I want to get rid of that rough sawn there, that'll be part of the scarf joint, so this will be up also. So that's the first thing I do, is I'll go ahead and label up and forward, up and forward like that. So another thing to keep in mind, and another thing that I'm conscious of when I'm making a scarf joint, it doesn't matter too much on this one, but if you were making a scarf joint that was actually like on a bottom plank or something where it was exposed to the water, you know, outside on the outboard side of the boat, I always like to, let me get this plank down here. Depending on if this is the outboard side, and this is the outboard side the way I have it here. Let me get over here. I want to cut that scarf, like for instance in this piece, I want to cut, if this is the forward or leading plank or edge, I want to cut this, so if you can imagine, I'm going to cut it like that, so water, if the water surface is coming over this way, it's gonna be thrown off, as opposed to the other way where water would have a chance of getting in that and separating it. Not that it's a big deal on this thing, but I usually like to do that. So the next step, I'm going to lay that 18-inch scarf joint out, and so I'll turn the camera off, lay that out, and start it back up, and we'll take a look at the layout of the scarf joint, okay? Okay, I have the scarf joint laid out on both pieces. I cut the end square. Now the width of this is rough cut, but there's a good side on this edge, and the same with this. And when I ran this line around here with a square, it met up, and then I cut the ends off square. So again, this scarf joint is 18 inches long, and it goes from the full thickness down to nothing. So before, when I was mentioning the direction of the water flow on this, I guess it is going to matter, because this keel is going to be, once it's cut, it's going to be outside, you know, it's going to be on the this is the outboard side, so water is actually going to be rushing over it this way. So it's good to glue it up this way here with the water going over this taper instead of the water coming in. Not that that wet system I don't think would ever separate, but it's probably just good practice to do it that way. So I have them laid out. The crosshatch area is the material that has to come out. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to build a little jig, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. I'm going to build a jig and use a router with a big straight bit to take that material down. But I'm going to take most of this material off, and I haven't figured out how to do that. There's probably 5 or more ways to get that material out. I'm just gonna, well, on this one I'm just gonna run it on a bandsaw, but this one here, it's a longer piece, so I'll either hand saw it or grind it. I was even thinking about starting up my chainsaw and just cutting most of that material off so the router's not doing all that work. So here's the jig. It's a simple plywood jig, 3 pieces to make it, and this is the material that I want gone. So it has a bottom and 2 sides, and the bottom is 3/4 inch plywood, and I made the sides out of half. These are 2 identical pieces, a 1/2 inch. I double side taped them together and then laid out my line. Now the sides have to be, you have to take into consideration the height of this router, where this router is going to sit. So what I did was I put it on here like that, and then I just took a ruler and I think it was right around 3.5 inches that I started, and there is some adjustment for that bit. So you want the router to be up a little bit, and then what I'm going to do, here's the 2 pieces. This is the right side. I just laid this line out. This is the 3.5 inches from here to here, and this slope is the same slope as the scarf joint here. So if you lay it on here like this, so I think you get the idea. It's just the same slope following that scarf. I'll probably double side tape this piece down on here, because when you get to the very end, sometimes it wants to lift up. So I'll double side tape that. So I'm going to go ahead and make this cut, separate these 2, brad nail them, and probably glue them to the sides, and then the jig will be complete. Won't take much to do. So I'll stop the camera and I'll start it back up once this jig is in place, okay? Okay, I have the jig built. I put it together. I didn't use any glue. That way I could take it apart and adjust these for different scarf joints. What I did was I just went and put a couple of 3 brads on each side to hold it, and then I sunk some number 8 by 1 inch screws into it, and that should do it. I didn't put any glue on it. So, and another thing I wanted to mention, this is the 18 inch mark right here, but I wanted to continue that slope further than that, because I'm going to need the router's going, the base of it's going to be up here, so I extended it more than it needs to go even. So there's that. And one thing, I had with the base plate on here, this base plate wouldn't work, because when you go all the way over to the one side, it's just going to fall in, so I had to extend that. Sometimes I make bigger base plates, but this time I just cut a couple of sticks, and I'm going to mount them on there. They're I think 3/8 wide or thick, and then I countersunk. So I'm going to put these on here, and that should work. So I'll tighten them up, and that way it still gives me good visibility, instead of having a board that comes across here, you know, one big piece. So I'll just put it on like this, and then all the way over the side I still have, the sticks are long enough so it won't fall in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring it across and take that material out. So I went ahead and took the shorter piece over to the bandsaw and just cut proud of the line, so the line's still on there. I just took most of the material out. So I'm just going to put that on there, I'm going to double side tape it because you can see this, once it gets thin like this, it starts to pop up. So I'm going to double side tape that, and I'm going to set my router depth and go for it. One thing I wanted to mention also was I don't always use a jig when I make these scarf joints. A lot of times I'll just do them by hand. I'll cut close like this, and I'll just take a grinder and a long board, a hard board, and sand these in by hand. It doesn't take that long, and it's not that hard to do. So, and a lot of times on the smaller, like this is 1/2-inch plywood. Sometimes I scarf 3/8 or 1/2-inch plywood together. Sometimes it's easier to just lay them out and work them in by hand with an angle grinder or a 90, and then a hard board with sandpaper on it that I use. There's one up here. A board like this. I'll get it close and then I'll just work it in. So that works well too, but I like to mix things up, so I just built a jig this time. So we'll see how that works. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the long piece here. I'm going to cut the material off, and then we'll start with this one. I'll double side tape, get everything lined up, get the router ready to go, and we'll take all this material off. Okay? Okay, I started taking the material off of the end here, the long piece. It's 16.5 long, and I can't run this through my bandsaw, so I'm using this rip saw, and this is a true rip saw if you look at the size of the teeth. And I like to find these at yard sales, and then I'll take them to a local guy here, and he sharpens them for me. And I'm going to set the camera down and show you. I just started ripping this. I'm going to show the rest of the cut, show how well these old saws work for certain things. I'm going to grab me a wedge too. So I'll take it down, make sure I get a good line there. And it is starting to pinch right there, so once I get a little deeper, I'm going to put that wedge in there. So you see it takes off the material. I just want to make sure that I'm proud of that line on the underside. See, it's starting to bind a little bit. So I'll put this wedge in here. Right like that. Just check the line underneath. Yeah, we're good there. Starting to come off that surface now. We'll see how we did on the other side. So we're still proud of the line, that's good. I might even take a hand plane and take some of that, a little bit more there. But I just want to show that old saw. Alright. Okay, I took a jack plane to that long piece and just took some more material down. And so I figured I'd start the camera up. I have this other one in here. This came straight from the bandsaw. And now it's a good opportunity to use the jack plane and just get a little bit closer So I'll set the camera down and just show you that. The more material I can get off, the easier it's going to be for that router. So I'll just take a little bit off a little bit more, get it a little closer to the line. This is just roughing it in. I'm about 1/8 away from that line on both sides. There, so that should do it. See, I'm getting closer to the line. All right.